Recording will start soon. Recording has started. Chat messages.
Hello,
So recorded.
hello, am I audible? Tasodhar or Bhavna?
Involve your microphone is on. Meet dash div dash adjust dash car.
Hello,
Involve meet
my
dash div dash
Bluetooth device is
Sir,
not
audible,
working.
sir. The chat remains as a chat phone.
Okay, sir, okay.
Involve.
So let us continue. So today we are into the last session. And, so here today we shall focus on uh, Unit 21 that describes about policy analysis, methods and techniques. In fact, in the last class, we focused on some of the problematic areas. That I mean the mathematical methods or some use of mathematical tools, some formulae. They were actually uh, not to be appropriate to be discussed theoretically on the through this online mode. So that such type of uh, matters can be better understood in a physical mode or in a face-to-face communication. So that is why it is better if we didn't take up such type of issues through this mode. But anyway, here, so of course, some of the parts we have already discussed. I suppose some of you might have understood something, though not completely. Uh, Still then, rest of the things can be managed otherwise. I hope so. So here, in matters of policy analysis, methods and techniques, here we will have to focus on some of the select techniques that are used in connection with policy analysis. Now, as we know, the present day society is an information society. So today, we are very much dependent on varieties of informations coming from different sources, and those informations they need to be properly processed if we want to respond to those. And if we do not respond to those, then obviously it will be one type of shortcoming on our part, which is unaffordable nowadays. So, information as processed data. Sometimes those informations come as processed data and they are essential as an aid to decision making. So obviously those data or those informations are very vital for us if we want to uh, arrive at certain decisions because we are confronted with some challenges at some points of time, and in those times we will have to arrive at or we'll have to make certain decisions. And if we have sufficient information, then such type of decisions or decision making will be easier on our part. So now in connection with policy analysis, this survey research is also one of the very essential and useful techniques which are used by the different policy analysts. So, survey research is the method, and here let me also make it clear right from the beginning that these type of methods they are also very well covered within the subject matter of uh, social science researches. In connection with social science researches also, we will come across such type of concepts. So, in my opinion, the discussion on these tools and techniques that we shall go through will be helpful in connection with our study and understanding of social science research as well as also in connection with this policy analysis. So survey research is the method of collecting data from a sample of respondents. Respondent, that means here, whenever a researcher goes to a field or whenever uh, he wants to gather the information from, so those people, they are known as the respondents. That is representative of a target population. So for example, if we are trying to collect information from a section of a society, then the people living in that society can be considered as the population. It is one of the most common types of social research for collecting quantitative data. Quantitative data in numbers and figures, that is quantitative data. The survey is intended to represent characteristics or perceptions of a target population. So, what actually the target population wants, or what do they want to uh, respond or communicate? So, it consists of all objects, individuals, or social units. So, within the target population, these things also, all objects, individuals, or social units, they are also taken together into the body of consideration. Here, for example, to know the environmental effects of an industry in a particular location, the target population may consist of all the individuals living in and around that industrial area. So here this example has been given in order to explain us what is actually the concept of the population, target population. So the target population means suppose somebody is going to study industrial pollution, then obviously he will conduct a study on those people who are affected by the industrial unit which is under study. One will not go to study the effect of pollution in some other areas. That will be fallacious, or that is absolutely baseless also. Okay, so that is known as population. That means if somebody wants to study the impact of industrial pollution in Rourkela around the, so we can say, around the steel plant, then obviously one will have to focus on the population concentrated in Rourkela in the vicinity of that steel plant. So that is known as the population. Here, similarly, to know the people's opinion on construction of an irrigation project. Another example is also given for the clarity of our understanding. Suppose somebody is uh, interested in knowing the impact of an irrigation project on a particular population which is going to be affected by that irrigation project. So, obviously, one will have to focus on that area only, the people which are going to be directly impacted by that irrigation project. So obviously, because those people they have a say, they have a voice, they must be having their opinion, they must be having their voice in connection with what is known as the impact of this irrigation project on that target population. So for a variety of reasons, it may not be possible for us to elicit the required information from the whole population. So this is the difficulty. That means when we want to make a study on the impact of industrial pollution on the people of Rourkela, then we will not go to study the 4-5 lakhs people who are concentrated in the entire steel city. So here, what we will have to do, we will have to select a target population. Researches are done like that. When somebody is researching on democracy in India, it doesn't mean that one will have to study the opinions or the responses of 140 crore Indians. So there must be a target population. In such cases, we may use a sample. So that is known as sample. That means we will have to take a sample. ଯେମିତି ଆମେ ଓଡ଼ିଆରେ ଆମେ ଜାଣିଛେ କ'ଣ ହାତ ହାଣ୍ଡିରୁ ଗୋଟିଏ ଚିପା ଯାଏ ସେଇଭଳିଆ in case of research also we do the same thing. We collect a sample that represents the target population. So target population means the entire society of population which is impacted by the phenomenon or by the problem under study. So what are the different types of survey? Now, because these are the methods which are used in connection with social science research as well as also in connection with policy analysis. Now, types of survey. Normally, before conducting a survey, one should decide as to how the results would be used. That is, whether the survey collects data at a single point of time or over a period of time. Single point of time means, say for example, 18th of April 2024. So that is single point. But over a period of time means, say for example, from 2020 to 2024, 4 years. So that is over a period. So the first type of survey is called cross-sectional survey. So when we are interested in the first type of survey, that is survey over a single point of time or at a single point of time, that is called cross-sectional survey. And the second, that is over a period of time. So when we want to conduct a study over a period of time, that is known as your longitudinal survey. Longitudinal survey. So here, now what is cross-sectional survey? Cross-sectional survey is used to gather data on a single population or several populations at a single point of time. Okay, so this is to gather data on a single population or several populations at a single point of time. The characteristics of these populations can be examined on the basis of a number of factors. So, the characteristics of the population is also very vital while we are going to conduct this type of survey. For example, if a city council is bringing a new legislation on road safety, it may want to know the opinion of people before the new policy is implemented. Okay, so road safety, for example, if there is orientation towards survey regarding the road safety in a particular place or at a particular place, then it may want to know the opinion of people before the new policy is implemented. So, what the people think or what the people feel about the concept of road safety in this matter. So, it may want to know the opinion of people before the new policy is implemented. Therefore, that means here in connection with policy analysis also. So there is, that means here there is not much difference between a social science research tool or technique and also the methods or approaches which are followed while evaluating a policy or analyzing a policy, because there is always curiosity. to know whether the policy is going to yield good results or not, whether the policy is going to be successful or not. Because ultimate end is how to see that the policy is successful. So the population groups for this survey may consist of heavy vehicle drivers. That means if it is a question of road safety, then who can be taken into the study, or which type of people can be considered as the respondents in such type of study. So vehicle drivers, light vehicle drivers, cycle and auto rickshaw drivers, pedestrians. So these are the varieties of people. If we take their opinion on the question of road safety, then obviously that can be a reliable research. That can be a reliable research. So in case of road safety, if we will go to take the opinion or survey the opinion of, say for example, housewives. Of course, housewives may have a role, but actually in connection with who are directly using the road, who are directly being impacted and also impacting this what is known as your road, or coming in contact with the issues of questions of road safety. So the factors could be perceptions on speed limits, type of punishment for road safety rule violations or violators, and how the money generated through fines should be spent. So these are the issues which need to be evaluated from the angle of, or from the point of the view of the opinion of the people, because it is the people whose, on the basis of whose opinion the policies are going to be implemented, and the policies are also going to affect their lives. It is not that we can close their eyes, of those who are the policy makers or policy formulators. They can close their eyes to the opinions of the people or to the reactions of the people. It's not like that. It will be fallacious. It will be dangerous. Okay. So one may also divide the population on the basis of their income. That means these are the criteria on the basis of which a target population or a sample can be selected. Okay, so a sample from the target population can be selected. Similarly, we can say, suppose one is going to study the impact of a particular vaccine or the impact of a particular medicine. So obviously, we will have to go to the people who use that vaccine to seek the opinion or to seek the remarks of the people who use that vaccine, the doctors, the pharmacists, and also those who are directly involved with these health issues. Now, coming to longitudinal survey, the other type of survey. First one is cross-sectional survey over a single point of time or at a single point of time, and now this is over a period of time. So longitudinal survey is over a period of time. It gathers data on a particular population over a period of time to permit comparisons, to permit comparisons or to make comparisons. Okay, so here, uh, for example, if the government is introducing a new policy on electricity billing, bill distribution and collection in a city, it may conduct the opinion survey of its people before and after introduction of new policy. So the longitudinal survey can further be divided into trend studies or cohort studies and panel studies. So here, over a longer period of time, that means before the introduction of the bill and also after the introduction of bill. So before, what was the opinion of what was the apprehension, what was the perception of the people, and after it was implemented, what is the reaction of the people? That only is known as a over a period of time. ତେଣୁ କୌଣସି ଗୋଟେ କାର୍ଯ୍ୟପନ୍ଥା ଗ୍ରହଣ କରିବା ପୂର୍ବରୁ ଲୋକଙ୍କର ମତାମତ ବା ସେମାନଙ୍କର ରିଆକ୍ସନ ଏବଂ ତାକୁ କାର୍ଯ୍ୟକାରୀ କରିସାରିଲା ପରେ ସେମାନଙ୍କର ରିଆକ୍ସନ ଦିଟା ଯାକ over a significant period of time when we make a comparison that will obviously give us a clearer picture on the study of that particular issue or that particular problem. So longitudinal survey is further subdivided or they are subdivided into uh, trend studies, cohort studies, panel studies. Okay, now uh, so let us come to understand what trend studies mean. Trend studies. The trend studies aim at collection of data at regular intervals through repeated surveys. So what is the trend? Repeated surveys such as surveys on unemployment, poverty, consumer prices, etc. So while samples are of the same population, they are typically not composed of the same people. Trend studies may be conducted over a long period of time. So, what is the trend? Unemployment trend. So, for example, unemployment rate ratio or an unemployment rate uh, within the first 5 years, the next 5 years, the next 5 years. So, what is the trend? Trend means suppose in one period it showed that unemployment rate is 5%. In another, it is the suppose 10%. In another 5 year period, suppose it is again 5%. So there is, we can say, there is no continuous pattern. It is continuously fluctuating. So the trend is fluctuating. So when it shows or when it gives different, uh, we can say different data on a single phenomenon, so that is known as the trend. Similarly, trend of poverty. So what is actually the trend as far as we can say incidence of poverty is concerned? Incidence of poverty in India. So here one can make a trend study. What was the incidence of poverty at the time of, we can say, independence, or what was the trend of we can say poverty before independence, after independence, then may come also to the recent period. So when we compare such type of problems over a significant period of time, then we can say that yes, the trend is either upward or trend is downward. So if poverty is reducing, then we can say that there is a downward trend. But if the poverty is showing a sign of increase, then we can say it is showing an upward trend. Okay, so that is trend. Similarly, consumer prices. That means prices of different commodities consumed by the people or consumed by the consumers. So here, obviously, whether consumer price is on the rise or consumer price is on the fall. That is, whether it is rising or whether it is falling. That is a trend. So if there is, we can say sometimes there is increase, then it is coming down. Then it is going up, then it is coming down. So there is no steady trend. So it is something zigzag or it is something unsteady. But when we say that the consumer price is continuously increasing, then that is a rising trend. If it is coming down, price is falling, then we can say it is a downward trend. So that is trend studies. Then comes your cohort studies. Cohort studies. Cohort studies also focus on a particular population or subgroups of a population. Subgroups of a population. So they are sampled and studied more than once, but these studies have a different focus. They study a group which has experience of an event or a program or scheme. And example is a sample of students who have completed master's degree in public policy in 2006 can form a cohort and could be questioned regarding the utility of the program in their respective professions. So, after completing the study, suppose they joined different professions. So, opinion will be taken while already in the degree, and again opinion will be taken after they join certain professions. Okay, so policy program their respective professions. 5 years later, a different sample of the students who have completed their master's degree in public policy in 2006 can be studied to see any changes in their perceptions. So, after 5 years, again, some people who have already completed the masters in public policy in 2006 will be taken so that obviously after a lapse of 5 years their opinion is likely to change. The change may be for the better, the change may be in the other direction also. Either they may show their appreciation or they may show their, you can say, dislike. Okay, so that possibility is there. So that is known as cohort study. Cohort studies. Therefore, a cohort study would sample the same population at different points of time. Same population at different points of time. Okay, so the same population means here the same population will be having some type of opinion before 5 years, and after 5 years, if those same population they are studied again on the same issue, then obviously their opinion might have changed a bit, and that change is actually the curiosity of the matter of research. So from that study, it can be known whether the people are in favor of any changes or they are actually satisfied with the existing plans, policies, programs. Now, there is another which is known as panel studies. Panel studies. Panel studies are similar to cohort studies, except that the same individuals are interviewed in each period. Same individuals in each period. Whereas in cohort studies, only a random sample of the same group. Okay, random sample of the same group. I think so many terminologies might be creating some type of confusion in the mind of the listeners or learners, but don't bother about that. Gradually, it will, you see, when we are newly getting acquainted with any of the concepts in social science, then those may appear to be little bit problematic or little bit cumbersome or difficult. But such type of perception will definitely change. The more when we get acquainted with such type of ideas, concepts, theories, etc., etc., and we uh, come to listen to the lectures, we come to read about the different issues in the books, and automatically when we also reflect upon such issues. So, a sample of the same group on the basis of year, age, income is studied. In panel studies, the same set of individuals solve the control function over a period of time. So, same group of people. That is why it is known as uh, panel panel studies. Whereas in cohort analysis, a random sampling is assumed to serve as control function. Acha, let me keep it saying right at this stage that some of the concepts are also uh, discussed little bit ahead in this book, and when we shall come to that portion, you will see it is little bit clear. Okay, so have little patience, and if at all you are facing any difficulty, you can also interrupt me. So here, uh, the cohort studies measure net changes over time. The cohort studies measure net changes over time, whereas the panel studies measure changes over time. So gross changes, net changes. That is the difference between cohort study and panel study. Now let us focus upon certain survey methods. So broadly speaking, there are four methods of conducting survey or collecting data. In-person interview, that is one. Telephone survey, that is two. Mail survey, three. And internet survey. So nowadays, actually, these methods are now being taken as methods of study by the different social science researchers. And the same method can also be used or utilized in connection with policy studies also. So, in-person interview is one technique, that means face-to-face interview involving the researcher and also the respondent. Telephone survey. So we can also seek the opinion, judgment, perception, reaction of the people whom we want to study or whom we are studying through telephone. Then there is also mail, and nowadays we know email has made our life so easy. So mail survey, or even it can be conducted through email also. Then there is internet survey. Okay, so these are the different type of survey methods. Now, what are they in detail? Let us come to examine. In-person interview. So basically, there are three approaches to collect data through in-person interviewing. They are your informal conversational interview, informal conversation. Okay, informal conversational interview. Then there is general interview or guide, general interview. That means first of all there will be a guide, and in accordance with that guide the interview will be conducted. So general interview, where interview will be held through the help of an interview guide which will be prepared in advance. ଆଗରୁ ସେଭଳି ଗାଇଡଟା ତିଆରି କରିଥିଲେ ପରେ ଇଣ୍ଟରଭ୍ୟୁ କରିବା ପାଇଁ ବା କଣ୍ଡକ୍ଟ କରିବା ପାଇଁ ସେଇଟା ସହଜ ହେଇପାରିବ, ସେଥିପାଇଁ ତାକୁ କୁହାଗଲା ଇଣ୍ଟରଭ୍ୟୁ ଗାଇଡ interview. Third is standardized format interview. Standardized format interview. Okay. So the informal conversational interview relies on spontaneous questions which immediately come to the mind. That is known as spontaneous, on the spot. No before preparation or no prior preparation. Arising from the natural flow of conversation. Arising from the natural flow of conversation. Sometimes when we talk to each other, say for example, two persons are talking to each other. So during the course of their conversation, something may also come to their mind. So, and that is a very, we can say, freewheeling method. It is quite free. There is no, we can say, uh, abrupt, we can say, interventions. Okay. So the informal conversational interview relies on spontaneous questions arising from the natural flow of conversation. କଥା ହଉ ହଉ ଯୋଉ ବାଟରେ ଗଲା natural conversation. Okay, natural flow of conversation. Actually, researcher ଯିଏ he is aware or she is aware, but he will conduct the conversation in such manner that the respondent should not be aware of this. ତେଣୁ ବେଷ୍ଟ ରେଜଲ୍ଟ କେତେବେଳେ ମିଳିବ ନା ଯେତେବେଳେ ରିସର୍ଚ୍ଚର ନିଜେ କନସିୟସ୍ ଥିବ କିନ୍ତୁ ଯାହାକୁ ସିଏ ରିସର୍ଚ୍ଚ କରୁଛି ବା ଯାହା ଉପରେ ରିସର୍ଚ୍ଚ କରୁଛି ସେ ଲୋକଟି ଜାଣିନଥିବ ଯେ ଇଏ ମୋତେ ରିସର୍ଚ୍ଚ ରିଲେଟେଡ୍ ଡେଟା ମାଗୁଛି। ତେଣୁ ସେତେବେଳେ ପସିବିଲିଟିଟା ଟିକେ ମାନେ ଫେୟାର ରିସର୍ଚ୍ଚ ପସିବିଲିଟିଟା ଟିକେ ଅଧିକା। So during this kind of interview, the respondents may not even know or realize that they are being interviewed. So those who are the respondents, they are not in a position to know that we are being interviewed. କାହିଁକିନା ସେଭଳି ହେଇଗଲା ମାନେ they will become conscious. And when a conscious person responds to certain questions, obviously his responses will also be uh, but that will be very different. Such type of opinions will definitely dilute the research. They will dilute the research. The advantage of this method is that it allows the people to respond to individual and situational differences. So individual and situational differences can be easily identified or known through this in-person interview or informal conversational interview method. Informal conversational interview method. So the communication would not be threatening. So these are some of the, there are very, very carefully and also cautiously developed approaches, developed etiquette, developed skills which need to be employed by the social researcher in order to in order to obtain the right data. haphazard ବା ଇଏ ହେଲେ ଚଳିବ ନାହିଁ, very serious, very careful ହବାକୁ ପଡିବ। ଜଣେ କି ସେ ପଲିସି ହେଇଥାଉ କି ଗୋଟେ ରିସର୍ଚ୍ଚ ହେଇଥାଉ, ସୋଶାଲ ସାଇନ୍ସ ରିସର୍ଚ୍ଚ ହେଇଥାଉ, ଯୋଉଥିରେ ହେଲେ ବି एकदम केयरफुल हेले जाकि डाटा कलेक्शन फेयर ही परिबो। डाटा कलेक्शन फेयर ही परिले रिसर्च जेन्युइन हबो। सो बा पॉलिसी ठीक इफेक्टिव ही परिबो। So the communication would be non-threatening. The disadvantage of the informal interview is that it requires a great deal of effort and time to collect the information systematically. So in this method, collection of what is known as your information, it will take too much of time and also the effort will be very we can say the effort will also be very uh, cumbersome. A great deal of effort, that means not without any effort that you will be achieved, you'll be successful in achieving your desired result. So you have to put in sufficient amount of effort while you are conducting these social surveys through this method. So the scope, there is always scope to miss some important data since during the conversation, uniform questions cannot be covered. Uniform questions cannot be covered. So sometimes conversation always proceeds in an informal manner. Conversation, if it is conscious, then that conversation is not successful. Okay, so conversation means there must be absolute freedom or absolutely free flow or free exchange of ideas between the two who are engaged in conversation. So the quality of the data depends on the skills of the individual investigator. So what type of data one is getting, that depends on the skills of the individual researcher or individual investigator. So what type, if you are a serious researcher, obviously you will collect serious data. When the data are serious, research is responsible, research is valuable. And when your data and research are haphazard, automatically your research doesn't count any value, doesn't carry any value. So before interviewing the respondent, an interview guide is prepared that contains issues or questions to be asked during the interview. So a guide is to be prepared in advance that I will pose or I will put these questions. Question 1 is on this education. Question 2 on income. Question 3 on homestead. Question 4 on job, etc. etc. So the quality of data depends on the skills of the individual investigator. So if they as an investigator, if you are quite serious, then obviously you will put out is a very valuable piece of research, which will be not only beneficial for you, but also beneficial for the whole society. So before interviewing the respondent, an interview guide is prepared that contains issues or questions to be asked during the interview. So what questions will be asked? They are prepared in advance, keeping the subject matter of research in focus. So what I am going to study or what problem I am going to investigate, whether it is the question of employment or it is the question of unemployment, whether it is the question of, we can say, environmental crisis or it is industrial pollution. Accordingly, questions will also be designed in response to the matter of investigation. The main advantage of the interview guide method is that it ensures that investigators use the limited time available in the best possible manner. So, when you have a guide in your hand, automatically you need not bother. Straightforward, you put the questions in accordance with the guide, and after you obtain the responses to the questions, your job is over. So it will save time. That means you need not bother about the time factor. The main advantage of the interview guide method is that it ensures the investigator uses limited time available in the best possible manner. There are some disadvantages of this method also. Although this method overcomes the deficiency of omitting important issues, as in informal interviews, still it can inadvertently omit a few important issues. Some issues may also get omitted. Okay, so that danger is also there. When the data needs to be compared and used for further statistical analysis, the data should be collected using a standardized format. So data should be collected on the basis of a standardized format. In this method, each respondent is asked essentially the same questions. So standardized format means obviously the respondents will be put the same questions. The advantage of the standardized format interview is that it minimizes investigators' bias. In social science or in public opinion survey or public policy survey, the bias of the investigator is very important. So there should not be any bias. If there will be bias, then it will be very harmful. That is why there is continuously the we can say instruction, or there is continuously also we can say uh, guidelines in different social research um, books or materials that bias research should be bias free or free from biases. If bias remains, say for example, suppose a person, a Hindu is studying the Hindus, so that will be very difficult. Obviously, that person will be biased in favor of the Hindus. Similarly, if a Muslim is studying a Muslim problem, obviously he cannot be quite fair to the problems or difficulties faced by the Muslims. So here, these are the difficulties involved in connection with the social research, or even we can say policy analysis also. Now coming to the telephone surveys. So telephone surveys offer a comparatively fast and low cost alternative to in-person interviews. Fast, that means takes less time, very speedy, and also low cost. Low cost means obviously cost will be less compared with interview in-person interviews. Because in case of in-person interviews, you have to move to the place where the respondents are. So while you are moving there, obviously it involves a cost, and also not only in terms of money but also in terms of other uh, difficulties also. Okay, and one of the drawbacks of this method is that it is limited to persons with telephones, limited to persons with limited telephones. That means only those people can be surveyed, only those people can be accessed, only those people can be researched who have telephones. Those who do not have telephones, obviously you cannot obtain the information about them. So here this is a drawback associated with this method. Um, so persons who have telephones but their names are not listed in the book are omitted from drawing samples for surveys. This is also another difficulty. So if your name is not there in the telephone book, then such persons cannot also be contacted, even though having a telephone, but the number is not in the telephone directory or in the database which the researcher is having, then that is also unproductive. That is also, we can say, uh, illogical and useless. So, another technique called random digit dialing permits telephone calls to be made within specific geographic areas without the need for the list of telephone numbers. We should not go further deep into that, but just let us remember that telephone survey method is also there. That means some researches are done by the use of this telephonic survey or telephone survey method. Similarly, there is also mailed survey. That means we can also mail a questionnaire to those whom we want to study or whom we want to uh, uh, include in our research. Okay, so mailed survey. Hmm, just a minute. just a minute. So, uh, so the mailed survey, in this method, a pre-designed questionnaire is mailed to the respondents. Pre-designed questionnaire. That means a questionnaire will be prepared in advance and that will be mailed to the respondents who are expected to complete and return the questionnaire. So they are given a time. Within the given time, they will have to complete the questionnaire and then again they will have to return it. And after it is available or after it reaches the researcher will have to uh, then assess the information and accordingly the data will also be prepared by the researcher. So uh, it is substantially less costly. That means when we are sending a questionnaire through mail, then obviously it is less costly than both in-person and telephone surveys. Than in-person and telephone surveys. So the questionnaire is developed with closed-ended questions that make the data analysis relatively simple and quantifiable. Closed-ended questions. Closed-ended questions means the questions which have a clear-cut answer, a conclusive answer, closed-ended, and it has been dealt with little ahead. Again, it will be discussed. So, ଆଗକୁ ଅଛି ଆଗରେ ତାକୁ ବି ଦିଆହେଇଛି what is closed-ended question and what is open-ended question. Open-ended questions. Okay. So here, uh, so questionnaire is developed with closed-ended questions that make the data analysis relatively simple and quantifiable. So closed-ended questions are quite helpful. Why? Because on the basis of those responses, data collection is easier, and when data are collected, then quantification can be possible. Quantification or calculation or assessment that can be possible. It is commonly observed that the response rates in mailed surveys are low. So this is a drawback. So when we mail a questionnaire, obviously sometimes the response is very low. The non-response rates can be caused by many factors, which include non-availability of respondents or refusal to participate in the survey. So some people may not receive the questionnaire. They may return it. So postman will go, and if he declines to receive it, refuse to participate in the process also. So that is also another difficulty associated with this type of uh, survey method, mailed survey method. Then comes internet survey. Internet survey. So internet nowadays that is also an important or useful tool in many avenues or in many requirements, and it is also quite important in connection with social science research and also in matters of policy analysis. So a more recent innovation in survey research methods is the use of internet technology. There are two ways of contacting the respondents through internet. First, the researcher can mail the questionnaire using email facility. That is one. And in this method, you need to collect all the email addresses. ତେଣୁ email କରି ପଠେଇବା ମାନେ obviously we must be knowing the email addresses. If we do not know the email address of the respondents, then our hands are tied. We cannot do anything. That is what that possibility is there. Similarly, in the second method, the researcher simply posts the questionnaire in a web page. In a web page with a request to the respondents to fill them. So those who are familiar with the use of these ICTs, information and communication technologies, because nowadays there are many sophisticated devices, not only laptops or your palm tops, but also there are many other devices which have been invented and used in connection with social science research. Even computers are also being increasingly used. So, a request to respondents to fill them. The respondents who access the web page download the questionnaire. So, if it is given in a web page, then that page will be downloaded and sent the filled in questionnaire using either email facility or postal mail. So, that again requires some sort of, we can say, uh, commitment, sincerity from the side of the respondents. If the respondents are not responsible, they may it be careless. Okay, so why should I bother? This is a common mentality. Or somebody has posted a questionnaire, why should I respond to it? What is benefit to me? This type of mentality, this type of apathetic attitude is also not helpful in connection with social science research. So when it is given in the form of a web page, so the process is download the web page, then respond to the questions, and again send it through email or postal mail. So this is again also a cumbersome process which may be uh, supported by some of the respondents, and some of the respondents may not also like to pass through such type of stages one after another. So therefore, the internet surveys are ideal for collecting data from networked people and with email. So whenever we are discussing about these methods of data collection or opinion gathering, or when we are using such data in matters of policy analysis, then obviously we must be very much conversant, very much aware about the methods, about the we can say problems, about the benefits or opportunities associated with all these type of tools and techniques used in the social survey research. So then comes your questionnaire design. Questionnaire design. So this is useful in case of policy analysis. This is also useful in connection with social science research. Okay, questionnaire design. So while we are making assessment of a particular policy, that also needs to be evaluated on the basis of certain important questions. Okay, so a questionnaire is a format containing questions arranged in a sequence to elicit information from the respondents. To elicit information from the respondents. A questionnaire can be used for in-person interviews, that is person to person, or mailed surveys or internet surveys. In a way, the questionnaire is the heart of the survey research. Questionnaire means it's a set of questions. which are considered to be important from the point of view of the research question or research problem, and those will be raised in all such matters. So mail surveys and internet surveys should have a brief attachment introducing the survey and requesting the cooperation of the respondent in filling the questionnaire. So straightforward, don't send the questionnaire. Rather, have an introduction. Just try to introduce the questionnaire to the respondent so that it will be little bit convenient. It will be little bit convenient. Uh, Perhaps this part appears to be a little bit, we can say, incomprehensible, or perhaps there is little bit difficulty on part of the learners to uh, digest it, as a result of which there is no learner or participant logged in, only the RC office, and here I am the, so Bhubaneswar, Bhubaneswar. So what should we do? Am I audible to the RC Bhubaneswar? Am I audible to RC Bhubaneswar? एवढं तर काम करू एवढा हॅलो hello anybody in the RC office hello 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 joining to ଏ ଦିଟା କାଇଁ କାମ କରୁନି ପରା କନେକ୍ଟ ଦେଖଉଛି ତ କନେକ୍ଟ ହେଇଛି ବୋଲି ଆଉ ଡିସକନେକ୍ଟ ଅପସନ୍ ଆସୁଛି ପରା Hello, hello. नहीं तो नेट पढ़ेले पार्टिसिपेंट पढ़े भी ଯିବେ କାହିଁକି? ହଁ ମୁଁ ତ ଭାବୁଛି ସେ ଏଇଟା ଇଏ ଗୁଡାକ mathematical derivation problem ଗୁଡାକ କିଏ theoretically ଶୁଣିବ ନ୍ୟୁମରିକାଲ ଏଇଗୁଡାକ ଏଯାଏ ତ ଆସିନି କାହିଁ ନେଟ୍ ତ ନା ଅଛି so here now there are different types of questions. I'm sorry for the discontinuance of some of the participants. But anyway, as I have been assigned with the responsibility, let me continue till the end of the time. So here the regarding the types of questions, each question or set of questions should be designed and carefully worded. They should have clear instructions on how the respondents have to fill the answers. For example, what difficulties are you facing in your business? And here, check the reason that applies in your case. So here, these closed-ended questions limit the respondent's answer to the survey. That means in case of closed-ended questions, answer can be point blank, leaving no scope for any further doubt or any further possible responses to the same question. So that is in yes or no format. Yes or no or true or false. That means point blank answer. So if a question is put and its response is short in form of yes or no, so obviously that is very convenient to be provided. And there is no question of any, we can say, other possibilities of the question taking as some response or as some answer. But there are Some questions in the form of, we can say, that is choice, multiple choice responses with an option for other to be filled in, or ranking scale response options. So these ranking scale response options are like very important, somewhat important, not too important, not at all important. So that means here the question is left with so many responses. That is why it is known as open-ended questions. Closed-ended questions means having a point blank response, either yes or no, or true or false. But in this type of questions, responses can be very important, somewhat important, not too important, or not at all important. So, for example, suppose one is posing a question in order to elicit an information regarding the educational qualifications of the respondents. So here the responses are illiterate, below matriculation and above, or graduate and above. So obviously one can very conveniently choose any one of the responses. Similarly, when TV channel, suppose a question is asked like this: which TV channel would you generally prefer? So that is, suppose sports channel or entertainment channel or news channel or spiritual or any other. So this is also with some, we can say, preferential responses. And the most important problem that our country is facing in the current year is here in case of this type of, we can say, ranking responses. So in response to such questions, I mean, uh, our country is facing in the current year which important problem. So here what happens, the different respondents can have different opinions. But when the researcher will state the responses in categorical terms, say for example, suppose poverty is a problem, population is a problem, corruption is a problem, terrorism, illiteracy, unemployment. So this way, you can say the response of the respondent is short in these forms. So, for example, I strongly agree, I somewhat agree, I have no opinion, I somewhat disagree, I strongly disagree. So there are so many options or so many choices to be provided in the form of what is known as the response to such questions. So the advantage of closed-ended questions is that they are more easily analyzed. The response to every answer can be quantified by assigning a pre-coded number. Quantification. So for example, for yes, this is the value. For no, this is the value. Or for true, some value, for false, some other value. So pre-coded numbers so that statistical analysis becomes easier. That means when it is codified or given a numerical value, then the data analysis becomes easier. So the response rates are higher in surveys that use closed-ended questions than open-ended questions. So here this is a distinction between these two. Closed-ended questions are convenient to be answered, so it automatically brings or takes more respondents. More respondents will prefer this type of mode of answer. And open-ended questions are somewhat, we can say, elicit some less response. Now, the advantage of open-ended questions is that they allow respondents to include more information, including feelings, attitudes, and understanding of the subject. However, the response rates may not be encouraging when open-ended questions are used. So this is somewhat we can say the advantages as well as disadvantages associated with these different types of questioning. Now, there are some needed precautions to be taken while we are considering the wording of the questions. So, it is to the credit of the researcher that what type of wording he or she is going to use. Because if the words are not appropriately used, then sometimes it may be difficult on part of the respondent to provide the pinpoint answer or pinpoint response, exactly required response to the question. So the wording of survey questions is a tricky one. It is difficult to develop questions with proper words that convey same meaning between the researcher and the respondent. So it is a common principle that whenever the researcher is stating a word, the meaning conveyed to the researcher must also be the same meaning that it will be conveying to the respondent. Suppose if the respondent will be taking a different meaning than the meaning which is there in the mind of the researcher, then that can be very misleading and also dangerous. To write effective communicating questions, the researcher should keep in mind the following. So how the wording of the questions have to be framed. That is also a very important requirement in connection with this framing of questions or formulation of questions. So the principles are questions should be written in simple language and avoid complex or long winding sentences. No long or complex sentences, rather, it is as simple as possible. Then, questions should be kept short and simple, very short and also simple, not roundabout way. Questions should be specific and focused. Specific and focused. If it is on the issue of poverty, then obviously something directly related to that problem only, not anything else. Specific and also focused. Avoid general questions. Sometimes general questions they do not actually help in the process of obtaining the response that is highly desirable or highly desired in connection with an empirical or a reliable research at least. Avoid questions that are sensitive and hurt the feelings of respondents. Sometimes such type of questions must be avoided. Say, for example, sensitive questions like sexuality or sensitive questions like caste or gender. So these are some of the issues which are very sensitive in nature, and such type of questions should be attempted to be avoided, or at best, if they are unavoidable to be posed, then they must be very carefully designed. Now, coming to the order of questions, coming to the order of questions, there is a sequence. So, the sequence of questions is another important consideration in developing a questionnaire. So, these are the points which must be kept in mind while we are ordering the questions. Easier questions that the respondent feels that he she can respond should be at the beginning. Okay, so first of all, the easier questions, which are very easy to answer on part of the respondent, they must be kept initially or in the beginning. For example, you can put questions like name, what is your name? So, very easy. What is your age? Very easy to answer. What is your qualification? Very easy to answer. Your sex, or etc. So, these are easy questions and they should be kept fast. Sensitive questions should be avoided at the beginning of the questionnaire. Sensitive questions must be avoided. And what are the sensitive questions? Just a little while before we discussed. Then do not put most important questions at the end of the questionnaire. Suppose the questions which are very important from the researcher's point of view, such questions must not be put or placed at the end of the questionnaire. Don't take them to the end of the questionnaire. Many respondents may not answer the questions appearing at the end. So that is a common psychological tendency that we do not pay sufficient attention to the questions which appear at the end, come at the end. That is why the questions which are most important from the research point of view must be placed in between, not at the end. So they are likely to develop fatigue by that time. So the questions should be ordered in such a way that it corresponds to the respondent's natural way of thinking. So respondent's natural way of thinking. That means the questions should be designed in such a manner that the respondent will find it very convenient and also very friendly to respond to. Then one should be careful while designing contingency questions like if your answer is yes to the previous question. So these are known as contingency questions. That means the answer to a previous question might be having some bearing on some later stages of the questioning. So this is something very problematic on such type of possibilities must be avoided. Now there comes an important issue that is pre-testing a questionnaire. Pre-testing a questionnaire. That means before the questionnaire is forwarded to the respondents, at least there must be some pre-test. So before the sending, pre-testing of a questionnaire is essential to improve the effectiveness of a questionnaire for collecting data. So pre-testing is very essential. Before sending the questionnaire to the respondent or the interviewer meets the respondents, the draft questionnaire should be tested for its effectiveness with a small group of people. So let it be tested with a small group of people, at least 8 to 10 people or something like that, 10, 15 people, they should be arranged in order to take the questionnaire and then verify how they are finding it suitable, whether they are encountering any difficulty, major difficulty, or they are actually uh, interpreting or understanding the questions in true spirit of the questionnaire. So pre-testing can help you determine the strengths and weaknesses of your survey concerning question format, wording, and order. So that is very beneficial when there is a pre-test. Obviously, that will help the researcher in removing a lot of difficulties which he or she might have encountered during the uh, advanced stages of the research. So there is no hard and fast rule to decide the number of respondents for pre-testing. Of course, there is no hard and fast rule that always one should stick to a certain number of respondents. It may vary depending on the situation and also depending on the convenience of the researcher. But if it is kept to the minimum or kept to a small number, that will be rather easier to monitor and also easier to uh, easier in connection with the research. However, it is ideal to have a pre-test sample of 10 and not more than 30. So this is in opinion of the writer of the book that when we are conducting a pre-test, the pre-test must be uh, taken involving at least 10 or at best 30 respondents. Now, sampling methods. The sampling methods. So before conducting a survey, you must choose a representative sample of the population under study. So what is the population under study? And the sample has to be taken from that population. Sample is a representative of the population or it is a subset of the population. So unless your target population is very small, it is not always possible to collect the data from all members of the population. This is quite plain and simple. There is neither any need nor any feasibility to approach all the members within a population. So a subset of population that contains all the characteristics of that population is called a sample. So it should be carefully chosen, carefully selected so that all the characteristics of the population are reflected in the sample. So in that case, all the interferences drawn from, all the inferences drawn from the sample are probably applied to the entire population. Therefore, researchers generally survey a sample list of respondents from a population which we call a sampling frame. Now, so what is probability sampling methods? Probability sampling methods. In the probability sampling methods, each unit or item in the population has a chance of being included in the sample. Now, this method of sampling reduces the sampling errors, and normally we say that the sample is an unbiased sample. An unbiased sample. So there are several methods of probability sampling, and in this we will discuss the following probability sampling. So these are like simple random sampling, systematic sampling, stratified sampling, cluster sampling, multi-stage sampling, non-probability sampling, like these. So simple random sampling, this method is used when a sampling frame is small. So simple random sampling can be used or can be taken recourse to while the sampling frame is small. And in the so we use random numbers to choose the sample from a listed population. First, each member of the population is assigned a unique number. And in this process, there are also, we can say, subsequent steps through which we can say that the different, we can say, members within the frame can be selected depending on the basis of requirement or on the basis of appropriateness. Similarly, systematic sampling is the sample units are selected from the population at equal intervals of time, space, or order. This is somewhat which describes the systematic sampling. That is, the sample units are selected from the population at equal intervals of time, space, or order. The selection of sample in this method is very simple. Arrange all the units of the population in an order by giving serial number from 1 to n. Here n stands for any number. So maybe it is 100, maybe 1000, or maybe less or more than that. So there is a continuous numbering. And this decide the sample size. That is, sample size is suppose it is assumed as letter n, small n, and then sampling interval is suppose it is uh, k, small k. Then by dividing the population size, that is capital N, by the sample size small n, we get the interval. Here, uh, in this example, it will be easier to understand. Suppose we have a population of 1000 and want to draw a sample of 100 units. So 100 out of 1000. Then first arrange the population units giving serial numbers 1 to 1000. Since the sample size is 100, then let us divide 1000 by 100. So when we divide 1000 by 100, so the interval is 10. That is, interval k is 10. So select first sample unit at random from 1 to 10. Suppose you have selected 5, then the subsequent sample units are 15, 5 plus 10, then 15, then 15 plus 10, then comes 25, 25 plus 10, 35, serial number 35, then serial 45, then serial. So this way it will continue up to 995 because here we are having a total population of 1000. So this, for example, if you could you conduct the survey of consumers in a departmental store, the time of consumers, say housewives, working people, etc., depends on the timing of the survey. And another disadvantage is that the first sample unit selected decides the rest of the sample units. Now, the thing is that sometimes this type of actually, right from the beginning, I have also kept saying that such type of numerical uh, sections which deal with some statistical or mathematical calculations, concepts, They can be easily understood only when it is through a physical mode or face-to-face contact. In a very we can say virtual mode, explaining such type of issues or explaining such type of concepts will not be that much effective. That perhaps the reason for which the learners, or at least 3 to 4 participants who were there till about 6 in the evening, sorry, till about 6:30, around 7, they have already left. But anyway, so then comes the question of, or the third method, that is known as stratified sampling. Stratified sampling. So if we have heterogeneous population like male, female, rural, urban, literate, illiterate, low income, high income groups, etc., then we want to have a representative sample from each of these stratum. That means male, that is a stratum, female, another stratum, rural people, one stratum, urban people, another stratum, literate people, that is a stratum, illiterate people, that is also another stratum. So that is why it is known as stratified sampling. That means every stratum within the population must be taken into account so that the responses or the answers from these people can at least throw some light on the nature of the problem, nature of the problem to be investigated in a fair manner. So, for the purpose of fair investigation, fair research, we need to give representation to all the strata of the population, which is intended to be studied. Since the random sample is drawn from each stratum of the population, this method is more representative and thus represents more accurately the characteristics of the population. So obviously, when we are taking every composite stratum of the population into count or into consideration, that automatically gives a very sensible observation as far as the responses from such type of strata are concerned. Then comes the cluster sampling. Cluster sampling. In cluster sampling, we divide the population into small groups or clusters. Then samples are selected randomly from one or more groups, that is clusters. Here we assume each cluster of population will have all the characteristics of the population as a whole. So the clusters have to be representative of the characteristics of the population. Now, the cluster sampling is more appropriate in geographical studies. For example, suppose we are conducting a survey in Mumbai. So instead of spreading the sample to the whole geographical area of Mumbai, because you know Mumbai is a vast metropolis where the population size uh, is beyond 1 crore. So in such a place, we can divide the city into 30 blocks, select a few blocks, say 3 or 4, and then select a representative sample from each block. So entire metropolis divided into three blocks. 3 to 4 blocks are taken for the study or research, and a representative sample from each block from these 3 to 4 blocks. Then selection of groups or clusters of elements rather than individual elements is regarded as a more practical approach to surveys its samples. Sometimes the cluster sampling is also called as two-stage sampling. Two-stage sampling. Then comes multi-stage sampling. Multi-stage sampling is a generalization of the cluster sampling. In cluster sampling, what we have observed is a two-stage process. In the first stage, the population is divided into a number of clusters, and in the second stage, from each of the sample clusters, we choose a representative sample. Multi-stage sampling is thus carried out in a number of stages. Progressively smaller population is selected randomly at each stage. Thereby, so this continues, and this is also one of the we can say very uh, useful techniques in the social science research procedure. Then there is also mention about a non-probability sampling methods. Non-probability sampling methods. The non-probability sampling methods are widely used as a case selection method in qualitative research or for preliminary and exploratory nature of quantitative studies where random sampling is too expensive. However, the probability methods of sampling are always preferable, and non-probability methods of sampling are not a substitute to the former. That is, probability. So, in this section, there are three non-probability sampling methods. They are like the following. One is convenience sampling, that is one non-probability sampling. Then there is judgment sampling. Then there is quota sampling. Convenience sampling, judgment sampling, quota sampling. Convenience sampling, uh, in this method, the researcher selects the sample that are convenient or on the basis of availability. So that is why it is convenience sampling. For example, in conducting opinion polls, people who are coming out of polling booth and are willing to talk are chosen for interview. So that is convenience sampling. That means here it is convenient to find some respondents who can at least give some reliable information. Mail-in surveys in newspapers, magazines, or TV are other examples of convenience sampling. That means here the researcher is in a convenient position to carry forward his research or her research. That is why it is named so. Judgment sampling. In judgment sampling, the researcher interviews a panel of individuals known to experts in the field, known to experts in the field. This sampling method is also sometimes called purposive sampling because there is a purpose behind this. So the sample is selected entirely on the basis of the researchers or experts' judgment. That is why it is judgment sampling on the characteristics of the sample. The consumer price index is based on a judgment sample. So, in the absence of representative data or where it is difficult to establish the universe for a sample, one may resort to judgment sampling. Then there is also quota sampling. Quota sampling is similar to convenience sampling. So, except that the probability proportionality of each stratum is preserved. Proportionality of each stratum is preserved. The samples are selected on the basis of some parameters like sex, age, region, income, etc. in order to make a representative sample. The researcher then chooses a fixed quota from each of the subgroups. That is why it is quota sampling. Quota from the sex category, quota from the age category, quota from the region category, quota from the income category, so on and so forth. So, unlike stratified random sampling, in quota sampling, the samples are not drawn randomly, but a fixed quota is chosen. So, now towards the last part, let us throw some light on what is sample size determination. So, there must also be certain principles regarding the sample size determination. So, how large the sample should be is a question that arises at the planning stage. So, what will be the size of the sample? Whether should be very large, or it should be in between, or it should be very small. This arises at the planning stage of any survey. So, if we take a large sample than required, then it results in wastage of resources. Suppose in our curiosity for making the research more rigorous, if we increased the sample size, then it may also prove to be counterproductive. Because if when the sample size is quite big, it is very difficult to obtain the responses from so many respondents. Wastage of resources because you will not gain any additional information. So this is also we can say taxing in terms of we can say it is quite demanding and taxing. On the other hand, if you have too small a sample than required, you may not be able to get reliable results. So this is also there. Neither it should be too small nor should it be too big. So there is also the question of we can say an ideal sample size. All probability sampling methods ensure representative sampling. Also, technically speaking, a sample size is related to the confidence level or precision level. How far, to what extent, at least precision can be maintained. And it also depends on the confidence of the researcher, how confident the researcher is in managing the sample size. So the typical confidence levels are 95% and 99%, and typical precision levels are 5% and 1%. So this is something regarding the different methods of sampling which are used in connection with social science research. Now that we are approaching the end of the time and also the end of this session dealing with MPA-15, that is public policy and analysis. Uh, we have to some extent been able to discuss the materials with the respondents in some productive manner, but still then it is more to the opinion of the learners than to the opinion of the um, academic counselor. So anyway, I must thank all the learners or participants who have been with these sessions throughout the entire period, and also I must thank in no uncertain terms to the Arshi Bhuvaneshwar. So thank you all. That's it for now.